Y'all ready for video games? Y'all ready for another video where I spend 10 minutes talking about other things before I actually get to the... So this video is going to sort of be a personal manifesto. No, I'm not gonna kill anyone. This is a good manifesto, where I talk about how hopeful I am for video games. I wanted to make a video that sort of works as a baseline from where I'm coming from when I talk about a video game, a sort of explanation of my point of view and the way I look at video games as a whole, more or less. So where most times, like most people, I'll make a video about specific things, here I'm going to need to get really broad, which means talking about stuff in a really broad sense and sometimes stating the obvious to get the point across. But, where to start? Okay, how about art? I love art. Like, conceptually, I love the idea of art. It's something that is constantly evolving, something that is changing, something that has a foundation that was built anywhere from the 1980s to the dawn of fucking man. But why is art? Why does art continue to is? Well, because we like doing it. Okay, but what good is art? What does it do for people? Why keep it around at all? Most of the time it's pretty non-utilitarian. A lot of art exists for art's sake. But even so, most people who are super utilitarian in their thinking center the conversation around how art should be used rather than should art be. Even if a lot of times art actively rails against utility, being just the thing you do that makes you feel good, and maybe makes other people feel good too. Nobody has ever been able to stop art, and basically nobody wants to try anymore. They kinda gave up. It won. If someone tried to make a society where art no longer existed in any form, everyone would just say, that sucks, and throw it in the trash. If the answer to what is it good for was absolutely nothing, people would still like it and want it to be there because it's fun and cool. So art has been going on for a long time, and in any art form, there's always a lot to learn about it. From the basic construction of it, to the advanced construction, to the concept of the deeper layers of metaphorical stuff that happens in the audience's mind, to the basic and advanced construction of those metaphorical layers, to the wider theories about how we should look at all of this as a whole. And then, tomorrow, all that can just change when someone comes up and puts a huge spin on it. Now everything's different, but maybe it'll go back to being the same sometime? Probably, but it'll be the same in a different way. It's wonderful! So, are video games art? Yes, at this point you would need to actively ignore a lot of stuff to say that video games aren't art. It's pretty in the dirt now, yet they're art. Video games are an art form. So what the fuck is that? Well, it means essentially a genre of art. For instance, paintings are an art form, and books are an art form. Now, let's stick with this example and dive a little bit deeper into what I mean. Let's say we took someone and we gave them a book and a painting, and told them, compare and contrast these two things. They'd probably say something like, well, these two things are very different. One of them is using colors to make a picture that's supposed to make you feel some kind of way. And this one here uses words to tell a story that's supposed to make you feel some kind of way. Now, we're breaking it down to bare basics, so let's change it up a teens and get a little bit more specific. Let's say we gave the dude Guernica and Anne Frank's Diary. Both of these works are trying to make you feel the same way about the same thing. To grossly oversimplify, Nazis do bad things and are bad. And historically, they've both been successful at getting that idea across. And our person would probably say, wow, I hate Nazis now? So let's pick these two things apart a little bit. Now, Picasso's Guernica tries to get across the feelings of the people bombed in Guernica in 1937, and also tries to get across the chaos of that horror using a distinctive visual language. It doesn't need to use any sound or any words for you to feel the horror and chaos this painting is trying to get across. And then you have the Diary of Anne Frank, a written account of what happened in a young girl's life as she hid in the attic from the Nazis. And without images or visuals, the words make you feel for her and help you understand her plight. Both of these things have a different way of doing things, and both of the ways of doing things have their own nuance to making you feel something, and nuance to making you feel as much of something as possible. The more books you read and the more paintings you look at for hours until you cry, the more you start to understand how all the little gears work. You can also look at the history of art and see how things have changed and how they have evolved. You can see artists disagreeing with other artists with their art, and changing the way that the art is. And with this knowledge, you can acquire tastes for art that might be a little bit harder to get the nuance for. And then you can make your own art. But of course, arts aren't purely beholden to their art form. Art isn't purely beholden to anything except technological advance and arguably physics. You can put pictures in a book to give a visual reference, and you can put words over a painting to give the images more context. Or you could use a combination of these two things to make an entirely different art form that utilizes both of what they have. Comic books. Now, comic books and books are also part of a different subgenre of art form. Books. No, they're storytelling mediums. Now, not always, but most times, if you're reading a book or comic book, you're having a story told to you. A storytelling medium is like the paint used to tell a story, and both of these paint sets have very clever ways of getting ideas across. So, let's talk about another one. I want you to imagine something with me. So, take a painting, right? Now imagine the people in the painting were exactly like they looked in real life. No, I mean exactly. Yeah. Well, this is a new thing we got. It's called photography. It's like paintings, but it looks really real. It's still pretty flat, though. It's in 2D, and you can't, like, smell the people in the photo or anything, but it's pretty much a direct visual replica of what the eyes might see for a moment in time. But this... oh, buddy, this one's just the beginning. What if we took multiple of those photos in a row and tried to win a bet about how horses run? Oh, fuck, it looks like the horse is moving. Well, okay, that's absolutely fucking bonkers. And, you know, I think that we might need to calm down. Oh, God, oh, fuck, that train is gonna crash right into us. Ah! Okay, so what if we took this and we put words on it, and music? Okay, that's pretty cool, but what if we just gave it sound?
And the power they took.
And color can come too. And of course, it does still need words, like books, but also it needs sets and props and actors, like in plays, the one we didn't talk about because I know jack shit about the theater. It's like a big art orgy, which is apt because throughout histories, artists have just been super horny. But what we got here, good buddy, is film. So let's talk about that a little bit. Here's the thing, I love video games, but if there is an art form I personally hold near and dear to my heart, it is film. And maybe I shouldn't be the one to talk about film.
Hi, it's me. A totally different person and not the same one at all. So, film is a very unique art form. Its closest brother is, of course, plays. Like was said, it's got the actors, the scripts, the props, all that good stuff, but there are some differences. You're not stuck in one vantage point. The vantage point can jump from place to place on set, or even move with the characters.
You want to get up close to someone's face? You can do it. You want to have lovers whispering sweet nothings in each other's ears? You got it. You want to establish a location by showing off landmarks and shit to set the mood? Get in the fucking helicopter.
And all of the freedom with what the audience sees via where the camera points and where the props and etc. are has given film its own sort of visual language, much like paintings and photographs have, but with the added layer of shit's moving. And also, like paintings and photographs, this visual language can be used to tell entire stories with very little words. I made a whole video about it, I'll post the link in the description. But along with that, there's also an auditory language. The way sound design is done is supposed to get you to feel a certain way. Probably the example you'll be most familiar with is the scare chord. You know, when some violins go apeshit when something fucking scary happens. Film combines several different art forms: music, writing, photography, prop and set design, acting, Foley work, practical effects, and then creates new ones like cinematography, special effects like CGI, and video editing into this one really amazing storytelling medium. And with all that, you can tell stories in ways no one was able to before. And of course, new ideas were born from it. So, here's the thing. When most people think about movies and watch movies, they generally expect a movie to just directly show them the story. They also expect movies to be pretty straightforward in the way they tell them. And movies, because of all these different layers, sometimes aren't.
Take a look at the movie Under the Skin. Now, this one doesn't really tell you what's happening. No one gives you a line explaining what's going on. There's no direct exposition. You infer all of that shit from what you were shown. All of the dialogue in this movie could just be taken out and it wouldn't really matter. The movie wouldn't change all that much. But all of the emotion, those feelings from terror to tragedy, work really well. Which, if you spend a lot of time with movies, it's easy to appreciate, but people who ain't used to this kind of thing might be put off by it. But it's this kind of thing that makes film really special.
Like Eraserhead. David Lynch's first film is probably my favorite example of this. This movie wouldn't work as a book at all. You'd lose out on all the atmosphere, and there isn't really all that much of a story. It might work as a painting and a photo, but you'd miss out on most of the movie. It could be a play, but look at how much the camera work plays into it. How would you start the thing out zooming in on the moon, superimposing Henry's face with all that sperm? Constantly switching sets back and forth immediately? Nah, it couldn't be a play either. Eraserhead, really, can only be a film. There are a lot of layers to film, and a lot of them are really baseline. But once artists got a hold of the baseline, they got real creative with what they had. And then people got more creative on top of that. Then they got fucking crazy. And technology improved and allowed them to get even more creative to the point that there was literally no limit to what they could put on the screen. And then we got fucking bored with that, and now we're getting pretty crazy again. That's a big thing about film. There's a lot of history behind it, there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot of evolution. And I love that shit. I think it's fantastic. Thing is, though, film is kind of a young art form. It's only been around for a little more than 100 years. 142 specifically, if we're, talking about the horse. But compared to other shit, that's fucking nothing. America is older than movies. Like, compared to the theater, right? A lot of the theories surrounding the theater were written by the fucking Greeks. And I don't mean Yorgos Lanthimos. I feel like I'm slowly becoming like a boomer reviewer. But in that amount of time, look at how much film has evolved. Look at how much pop culture this fucking super new art form has taken over. It's most of it. Film has gone fucking bonkers. And it is absolutely my shit. I am fucking here for it. Post-mortem even. I had to pull some fucking strings.
Now, we finally get to talk about video games. So, film is a new art form, but currently there is no one alive when it first started existing. But video games are way newer. Many people are alive who were alive when video games showed up. I preface this video about how we've pretty much decided that video games are an art form as a culture, and it's only been that way for like 10 years. It's very young. There isn't as much history. For instance, every other artistic medium got kind of an overhaul in the 60s and 70s with the postmodernist art movements. They took out the old and brought in the new, but video games were birthed from there. There wasn't an old. I talked about this a little bit in the Doom video. Video games are a baby art, but even so, video games have a lot of perks. You see, film added some layers onto theater, and some layers onto books. As a storytelling medium, it had new toys to play with when telling a story. Video games really punched it the fuck up. Video games can give you all the stuff that film can, but they give the audience control of the protagonist. Now, this is some absolutely galaxy brain shit, like, Eraserhead is a movie with very few words, and it doesn't need any more, because it's not really about those words, it's about everything else. It tells its story with the extra tools film has that other art forms don't. The everything else in video games is so much. And even being a baby art, video games have grown so fast. For instance, Wolfenstein 3D in 1992. This created the idea of a game where you run around and shoot things while looking through the protagonist's eyes. And then, 20 years later, in 2012, we have PlanetSide 2, which allows you to do that against and with 1,000 other players on a massive map in an attempt to gain control of it. Half-Life 2 had a revolutionary physics engine that changed the way that we do things. And Half-Life Alyx did something similar in that it revolutionized games where you use your own hands for things. The mere concept of Mount & Blade might fuck somebody from the 80s' brain out. And on top of that, how games tell their stories is really interesting too. You can have games that are just a world with characters acting on their own that throws you in to make your own story, you know? It's their world and you're just influencing it. Like Kenshi and Mount & Blade. You can tear the whole world down in a fire and rebuild it as your own, or you can just like start a shop. Or you can have a story told to you directly, but you make your own path through it, like The Witcher or Skyrim. There are things you can miss, or the main story can just be something you don't do. Maybe you just run around and steal shit and kill people. Or you can have a story that's told to you, and the path you take is dependent on the kind of person you create in the game, like Divinity and Fallout. There's a quest, you are the hero of that quest, but what kind of hero is up to you. Are you the cool guy who everyone likes? Are you dumb as rocks? Are you a piece of fucking garbage? You decide, and the other characters in the story will react to you as you go. Or a story where you play as a singular character and eventually arrive at the same end, but there are multiple branching paths you can take to that end, like Undertale or Night in the Woods. Or it can just be a story directly told to you, the same as anything else, but just give you control of the main character as they go on the path through that story, like Halo or Nier. The extra layer that video games added is a layer so deep it has created multiple new genres. Now, storytelling mediums have generally kept the same genres for centuries, but video games showed up and just messed all that up by making it more about the gameplay than the settings and events. Like, the genre that comes to your head when you think about The Thing is probably sci-fi or horror. The genre that you think about when you think about Half-Life is first-person shooter. The Witcher, fantasy. The Witcher, fantasy. The Witcher, RPG, etc. And the thing is, as an art form, video games can be more than a storytelling medium. While you can tell a story in Age of Empires, that probably isn't what you're going to try and do. But a lot of games that might not need stories sometimes have them anyway. Dead by Daylight doesn't need a story, but it has them. It has several, and honestly, they're really good. I love Dead by Daylight's lore. Video games don't need to be a storytelling medium, and there are many games that don't try to tell a story, and that's fine. You can just have a game where you place bricks, but for some reason, video games have always sort of veered in that direction. And I think that's great. I think they make an incredible storytelling medium because of what you can do with all of those extra layers. So now let's talk about the other topic I teased you with for this video. Death Stranding. Now, I wanted to use Death Stranding for this video because it's a game that has been very divisive. There are a ton of people who are die-hard fans, and a ton of people who hate it. Now, I'm going to try not to spoil anything aside from the basic premise of the game, which might be spoilers you might not want, so skip to here if you don't want those. A few decades prior to the game, there was this thing that happened called the Death Stranding, an event that connected the living world to the afterlife, and caused a huge apocalypse. The dead were killing people, blowing nuclear blast-sized holes in the world, and making rain that speeds up time on whatever it touches. You play as Norman Sam Porter Bridges Reedus, a delivery man or porter who braves the open air to face the timefall, the ghosts or BTs, and the terrorists to try and deliver packages from place to people who need them. You were hired on by your mom and your sister as a porter for Bridges, an institution determined to bring networks, roadways, information, and supplies of all kind to everyone from coast to coast to reconnect America. Partially by connecting people to the chiral network, a system like the internet that can also send non-organic supplies back in time through the afterlife and have them arrive nigh instantaneously at their destination. All of this information is given to you pretty rapidly in the first hour of the game, and all the exposition in the game is really clunky. Let me explain what I mean. So let's say that you live in the United States of America. You very well might. Let's say you get a cab in New York City, and the cab driver starts talking to you like,
you see that skyline? Didn't used to be like that. Used to be there was 2 towers there. They were called the Twin Towers. Unfortunately, almost 20 years ago, 2 planes, one for each tower, crashed into them, toppling them to the ground. It's an event that we call 9/11 because it happened on September 11th, 2001.
Yes, I'm aware.
Yeah, I bet it was all over the news, you know. They had kids take a day off of school all over the country when it happened. So anyway, they were taken down by a group of terrorists called Al-Qaeda. Now, Al-Qaeda is most of the information you get in this game is delivered to you like this to a person who would already know these things. Most egregiously is this one, which actually made me laugh out loud.
President's waiting. It's your mother, Bridget.
She sure is. I mean, you know, me, I constantly need to be reminded about my mom. I'll just be like, who's this lady walking around the house? You know, until someone tells me. I mean, there's a really simple, almost cliche way to fix it. Just have Deadman be like, you need to respect the presercerp of unit new. And then have Sam walk up to her and she goes, Sam. And then he goes, hi, Mom. Like, boom, there you go. Now, these are rookie mistakes. And of course, if a game is making these kind of rookie mistakes on the surface, you can pretty easily expect anything more complicated like metaphor, theming, character motivation, world building, all that fun stuff to be really clunky and bad as well. But every other aspect of the writing is really good. All of the information about the world is delivered to you in the silliest way possible, but it's some interesting stuff. The overall theme of bringing people together as a society and working together is one that's just outright stated multiple times with no subtlety, but it's a really good theme with a lot of depth that the game sticks to and spends a lot of time exploring why it's good. In fact, there's some gray areas being pointed out by many, including our main protagonist. You know, there's some good arguments against it that are made by the game. Of course, it's in favor of it, but it doesn't shy away from criticism that might come. You know, a lot of these characters have really silly code names, but they're all really deep and interesting characters, and will many times be used to explore the overall themes and expand on the world in some way. The dialogue and exposition is clunky, but everything that it delivers to you by clunking it around is really good. And like I said in the Christopher Nolan video, at a certain point, a lot of the surface stuff kinda doesn't matter. Unless, of course, you're the kind of reviewer whose only criticism is related to plot holes you find there, but that's just the writing side of the storytelling. And as we've seen this entire video, there is more to telling a story in this kind of art form. Sometimes. Now, with a game like Borderlands 3, it doesn't really use anything else to tell its story. It pretty much just has its characters stand there, look at you, and deliver writing to your face, which is fine for video games. If the writing is good, video games aren't cinema, so they don't necessarily need to be cinematic. But this is Hideo Kojima we're talking about. And I'd say maybe he doesn't really understand the language of dialogue or subtlety, but he does understand the language of film. Every time information is given to you with the visuals, it's really good. Like, for instance, what does Timefall do? Makes you old, now I know. Why do we need to burn corpses? And what the fuck is a void out? Got it! And of course the language of film isn't just used to deliver information, really it's more about getting you to feel something. And all of the cutscenes are very, very good at this. Most cutscenes in most video games don't really pay a lot of attention to things a movie would. Pacing, for instance, is almost always the first to go. One of the things I mentioned in a really long text wall that appears for 3 seconds in my Witcher video was that sometimes when I play a game and get to a big story moment, I'll walk slowly to the objective, pace it out a little bit so I can feel more of the impact. The cutscene in The Witcher did that for me, and most of the cutscenes in this game do too. Kojima knows how movies work. I mean, clearly, both because it's on display here and he's Hideo Kojima. But then, of course, there's the question of, why doesn't he just make movies? Well, because of all those other layers that video games have. He seems to understand those exceptionally well. Like I said, there was a point where you're told about who your mom is, and almost immediately she dies after telling you about her dream of recreating America by connecting the world, and your character talks about how he's not interested in all of that shit. Again, this is like at the very beginning of the game. So you need to bring what's left of her to the incineration plant. And the game has you walk there. It zooms the camera out, the music plays, and lets you walk through the beautiful landscape carrying your dead mother on your back, and forces you to contemplate her message, to absorb her ideas. It sits you down and has you think about what you've learned, while climbing a mountain using ladders and ropes left by other players. And then you start to get it. And I don't mean like you know what the message is. The message is clear. I mean you start to understand Kojima's intention. You start to see the message through his eyes. It's not that you know what he's trying to say, but that you see his vision of it. 'Cause where Kojima's going, you don't really need words to speak. And because this is a video game, it gives you the controls over how much of this world is built. For instance, there might be people who are reluctant to join bridges, so you need to do side quests to show them that it's okay to rely on people and that it might be nice to pitch in and do your parts. The more you help them, the more they help you. And then there are the online aspects of the game, which play directly into the theme. Like I said, other people can leave things behind for you, like ropes and ladders and bridges and roads and vehicles. It's wonderful. You can also give these guys like 80 thumbs up if you liked their thing. And they help you out so much, it sort of proves Kojima's point. You'll see a gap that you found a way over and think, maybe I should build a bridge there. That might help someone who's trying to do the thing I struggled with. Or maybe I should track all of this shit over to here so I can finish this road so people can just drive from point A to point B. I built 2 stretches of road and I constantly feel a little bit of pride when I see someone use the road you built show up on the side of my screen. You don't ever see these other players, but you can feel their presence and understand when they're helping you, and you can see how you can help them. You give as you receive. Everything you make is for everyone. It's like you and the other players have formed a community. Marx? Bullshit. Engels? Derivative. Kojima. Now this I love. The idea the game is trying to get across is baked directly into the gameplay, and that is what I'm fucking talking about. Now, before I continue on with the point of the video, let me actually talk about the gameplay real quick and give my thoughts on it. The whole delivery man gameplay thing that a lot of people talk about isn't anything that's really new to me. It's what I was doing in X3 10 years ago. I also enjoy games like Euro Truck Simulator, and Elite Dangerous really hooked me when I got Horizons and started playing as our luxury cruise line. But the biggest conceptual differences between this and those really is in those games, you're trying to build an empire for yourself, and in this one, you're sort of following a story. But this game also adds a physics engine, so if you fuck up, your stuff falls over and gets damaged, and that's bad. Also, you manage where you put your stuff, how much stuff you're willing to carry, and what you find on the road, and how much trucks you steal from the mules. The answer to that one was several. I stole a lot of trucks. It also adds some horror game elements, hiding from the ghosts. There are several things to keep you on your toes during your journey. It's a real step up from basically any delivery simulator I've ever played. I really love it. It's absolutely my shit. It also helps that the game is gorgeous. Also, the game is really clever with when it uses its licensed music. Like, the last quest of the second chapter, you need to trek all the way through the rain, over the rocks, through Ghost Quarry, getting fucking pulled around all through creation by the afterlife muck. My baby was autotoxemic, my boots were dead, and then you get out of the rain, over a hill, you see your destination, the music swells, and you know that you are out of the rain metaphorically, as well as literally. I can't describe how beautiful this hill is here. I could just fucking barrel down it as quick as I could and not need to worry about falling on my face and getting shit on by ghosts. But then again, Kojima did use 20 billion songs by Low Roar, and not one of them was Give Me an Answer. Shit game out of 10. Fucking garbage. Kojima is clearly a hack. No, I love this game. I didn't know how I was gonna feel about it going into it because it was so divisive, and I gotta say, I'm really blown away. It's fantastic. I also love all of Kojima's dumb cameos. Oh, hi, Nicholas Winding Refn. I made a whole video about one of your movies. Oh, you're here too.
Me. Dead
Hello,
man.
Guillermo del Toro. You gave an interview about how you made friends with the monster under your bed, and I saw it when I was 8, and it stuck with me my whole life. If anyone asks me what my favorite movie is, I default to Pan's Labyrinth. You're a huge inspiration. You were supposed to leave. But let's get back to the point, which essentially was video games are art. More specifically, they've been veering towards being a storytelling medium. And Death Stranding, it uses the fact that it's a video game to its advantage a lot, and I do think it's a big step forward, if not just for video games as a whole, then definitely for Kojima. I'm excited to watch his continued journey as an artist, and I'm really excited for how this game will influence other artists. Many people have wondered why Kojima doesn't just make movies. Well, he wouldn't be able to have you act out the themes of them if he did, would he? He's pushing his games in his own direction. How people will follow the trail he's blazing is up to them. Because to move video games forward, there needs to be stuff like this. Things that are divisive. Other mediums are well familiar with this concept. Video games are reaching that point where people are pushing away from the standard and delving into the deep. Andrew Allinson said that video games were toys for children, implying that video games couldn't have the depth of a postmodernist novel, that they would be stuck and beholden to their fan base of people who would just want to play Call of Duty and never be able to advance in any way. And of course I made fun of him in regards to the specifics of his argument, but he's been constantly proven wrong on the overall concept of the argument as well, as things that are kind of divisive have come out and challenged people's perceptions of what a video game is meant to achieve. And yes, there are a lot of people who would like video games to just be Call of Duty, but the games that have come out that aren't have been embraced by the medium and the people who love it. I'd say more even than Kubrick was by film lovers at the time. Video games are really stretching their wings as a storytelling medium. And my big hot take in this video is that one day they will be the best one. Film, like I said, is my shit. Film has so many layers, there is so much to learn, and it's all so interesting and fun. I basically have a video series dedicated to gushing about it, so I don't take it out on the people I love. But video games, one day they're gonna make film look like a little fucking bitch boy. They are going to shine so bright, bust in with such sound and fury, it'll be like nothing we've ever fucking seen before. We are going to get blown away like nothing has ever blown us before. Innuendo possibly intended. They'll make us feel for the protagonists in ways we've never done before. They'll drive us into introspection like nothing ever has, lay bare problems with society and let us experience its greatest perks. And in their most abstract form, they're gonna give meaning to ideas that can't be explained with words or visuals. How? I have no fucking idea, and that is so exciting. In 10 or 20 years, the things that we think are the hottest possible ideas for the future we have right now are going to be boring, so yesterday things that we just take for granted. It's going to constantly build on top of itself in new, fun, and exciting ways. We will pass that threshold gradually, and also watch stuff just catapult past anything we've ever seen. On the technology side, we currently got shit like Half-Life Alyx and Boneworks and Blade and Sorcery just making an entirely new way to play video games, and then we have Disco Elysium and The Witcher 3 pushing the boundaries on how good a story in a game can be, and then we have things like Hylics. They're not telling impressive stories or having the most impressive gameplay, but they're visually unlike anything else out there. And then there are games that are just good ideas. For instance, play as the monster that eats people, or play against 70 people in Takeshi's Castle, to name the ones that came out within the last month. And unlike film, you can just be one guy and make a masterpiece. An incredibly small team can make an incredible game that can just change the face of video games for a while. And more recently, that's who've been making the huge leaps. So even if there's like some horrible disaster, I mean like another one, that won't stop video games. So long as there's at least one motherfucker with Unity and a computer, those shits will just keep on trucking and keep on evolving. And a lot of the smaller stuff is what's going to push things forward in the future, even outside of disasters, future or current. That's how it's been for a while with most artistic mediums, and video games are no different. So I don't have the biggest platform, but I do have a bit of a platform. And one of the things that I'm most proud of that I've been able to do with the platform is show people new things, not just bring them what they might like, but try to get them to step out of their comfort zone and try some of the weird shit. Because the weird shit is where it's at, in any art form. That fucking game that a lot of people might say ain't for them or is outside of where you're used to, but whose proponents will absolutely go ape shit over how much they love it, that's the shit that's gonna push the boundaries. That's the shit I love to play, and that is the shit I love to display on a bright, shiny pedestal to whoever I can. But you may be wondering, if video games have such a bright future, how come almost everyone else with a platform isn't as bright and sunny about it as I am? Some of them are outrage mongers, sure, but a lot of them are really good and make some very good pessimistic points about video games and video games' future. If video games have such a bright future, why all this hate? Well, oh shit, is that a lake shaped like a heart? I gotta take a detour through there. Come on, mama, we're going on a date! You know, I'm the best delivery man in the country, and people have the audacity to say that I can't ship it.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem. Hey, you want some of this Monster Energy drink?